This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be
The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The Journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is The Journey.
The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The Journey. The Journey. The Journey. The Journey.
Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we're not going to disappoint you. We're going to really try to never, ever, ever disappoint you when it comes to these Memphis icons. Today we have Mr. DeAndre Brown, pastor, but what his real claim to fame is what he does on his day job, which is executive director of Lifeline to Success. What's up, DeAndre?
What's going on, Larry? How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So now listen, this is the quick round. We just want to find out the top line, and then we're going to come back in the second segment and unpack it a little bit. All right, so here we go. First thing, where'd you spend your early years of your life? And, really, what did that community give you?
It was mostly spent between Arkansas and Memphis, Westwood, South Memphis, with my mom during the weekends, and then back in Arkansas, in the rural part of Arkansas, like a town called Wilson, during the week for school.
Okay. So in Arkansas, is that where you were born?
I was born in Memphis, but I found out later my mom was on drugs, so she didn't want me in that environment. So she moved me out with my great aunt in Arkansas.
All right. So now, your parents were very much involved. How was your dad? Was your dad involved at all?
He wasn't around much. He found out later he was a paranoid schizophrenic, so that took him out even if he wanted to be involved.
Okay. So outside of your parents, who made the biggest impact on your life?
I say my great aunt and my grandmother kind of together. They were sisters, and my great aunt was the one that raised my grandmother, mother, and then me.
Okay. What decision did you make as a young child that ended up being a life-altering decision? You didn't know then, but looking back, you were like, whoa, that changed the course of my life.
Yeah, growing up in the segregated South, my great aunt was afraid of white people. She told me, if you want to be as good, you have to be better. So I took that to heart, and I did everything I could to excel in everything that I tried.
Right. Now, going back to your childhood, how different are you today than the dreams of your child?
Brother, you never could have told me growing up that this was what I would be doing with my life. I mean, there were some turns that I just never expected.
All right, so what was one of those childhood dreams that you had?
I wanted to be a doctor, actually.
Okay.
So I was going to school to become a doctor, got accepted to Rose College, pre-med, and then life changed.
We're going to find out how life changed. All right, so now, okay, so you said life changed. So I'm imagining there was a dip in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So when did you know you was going to be okay? When could you look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm on the right path, I'm going to be all right?
I was about 28 years old, and I was in prison. Looked in a mirror, and I had to realize that the decisions that cost me some things. But I had realized who I was, and I realized then when I came home, life was going to be different.
Wait a minute. So at what point did you go to prison? Where did that happen? Just give us a quick snippet.
Yeah, I went to prison when I was 28 years old, but I started really down the wrong path at 19 when I was a sophomore at Rhodes, and that kind of led me to the place where I ended up at 28.
Well, wait a minute. You were at Rhodes College, one of the most prestigious colleges in the South, in the United States for that matter. And that's when it turned down? As a black young man, that's when it took a downward turn?
Yeah, brother. Crack was really big in the early 90s in our neighborhood, and I didn't have any money. And it was a culture shock. I had to make a decision, do I spend all this time in school, or do I eat right now? And eating right now won.
Okay. Tell us your why. Why you get up every morning and do what you do at Lifeline to Success?
I believe that everybody deserves a chance. Everybody deserves to be loved. So I reach out to those that don't feel it, people that are excluded.
So tell us a little bit about Lifeline to Success, and so people have a little bit of context. So when we talk about it in the second part.
Lifeline to Success is an ex-offender entry program, and we only target people that have felony convictions. Our mission is to create positive, productive citizens, healthy, healed people, and we do that by being with them every day and providing them opportunity to gain employment as well.
Now, how do you fund this program? Because I'm imagining, is it a 501c3?
It's a 501c3.
Which means that it's a nonprofit?
Yes, we're a nonprofit. Most of our funding comes from the city of Memphis. We do have some private donations, but the city of Memphis has been our lifeline for the past 11 years.
Okay. I got a real interesting question for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You ready? All right. Tell us about the time that you realized that you were black. Set the tone. Set the scene. And what was the feeling that you felt and before it, and how did you feel immediately after realizing you were black?
I kind of knew I was black, but it hit home in 11th grade, segregated South. I'm the student government vice president. We had a first Black History program at our high school ever.
Which high school was this?
Rivercrest High School.
Okay.
And a young man held up a Confederate flag in the program because he didn't want to be there. And most of my friends, since I knew him, wanted to disown him. But I had to be the one to go and try to find some clarity.
Okay.
And that conversation was enlightening.
Okay. Tell us about it. Unpack it a little bit.
To see, and it really started when I got to high school, because being black, I was the only black boy in my class until junior high. But then when we consolidated at junior high, I was still a good athlete and smart. But in high school, some of my childhood friends.
And this is in Arkansas?
In Arkansas.
Okay.
Segregated South.
Right.
White towns, black towns.
Okay.
Some of my childhood close friends started hanging with just white people. And then the conversation began to change. It was never really overt racism, but you could see they were shifting the way they were dealing with each other and dealing with us. And having that conversation, but that being a backdrop, it was kind of hard because most of my black friends, they didn't want to hear it. So I had to end up being a mediator because I knew the guy, and he was a friend of mine. And it ended up going in a great way. But to have that conversation initially was tough.
Okay. So how did that conversation go? What did you say to him, and what was that moment that you said, oh, wow, I'm viewed differently?
I asked him why he did it. He simply said, because I didn't want to be there. Now, mind you, his father was the vice principal of the school, and I had been suspended earlier because I took a white girl home on the bus.
You were suspended because you took a white girl home. And what was the rationale for that?
She was my girlfriend.
Okay.
And, and I still to this day don't understand what caused me to try to go against norms, because that was the normal where I came from. And to do that, I tried to sit back and, you look at your life and say, what made you do that? And to this day, Larry, I cannot tell you what caused me to go that way.
Well, tell me, when did you say, I'm black?
Around that time, because then I had to make a decision on how the rest of my life would go. Knowing what obstacles I was facing then, I either had to fight back and own up to who I am, or allow what people thought of me to rule who I was going to become. And I was not going to let that happen.
Well, listen, you've heard the first part of Mr. DeAndre Brown's story and his journey. So listen, sit tight, sit back. We're going to get to unpack this. We're going to hear this great speaker, pastor, executive director really take you on his journey, on the journey. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this.
The Journey.
Jazz, America's own original musical art form. When did it start? Who were and are some of the major players? How do you distinguish what kind of jazz you're listening to? We talk about the great and lesser-known artists, songs and tunes, the instruments, and the social impact jazz has had on world culture since its beginning at the start of the 20th century.
Riffin' on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
And we are back on the journey. And I'm your host, Larry Robinson. I told you. We got a barn burner with Mr. DeAndre Brown, pastor, executive director of Lifeline to Success. We're going to unpack that first segment. So if you need to go back and get a refresher, go on and rewind now. But if you're ready, we're going to go forward with the second segment. So, DeAndre, tell us about that life. Tell us your early years being raised, what the family life looked like, who was in the household. Give us a little context.
So in fourth grade, I was first through third grade, I was with my grandmother in Memphis, going to Westwood Elementary. She had a great job. My grandfather had a great job, Kimberly Clark and Kellogg. So they were great upper middle class black folk. Okay. But then I was sent to Arkansas in the fourth grade.
Okay, wait a minute. Where's mom and dad? Because you just automatically jump with grandma and granddad. So where's mom and dad in those early years, from birth to third grade?
Yeah, mom and dad married when I was 4. Then they quickly split. Dad was a little abusive. The paranoid schizophrenia caused him some issues that he didn't know was be there. And my mom found herself addicted to drugs. So they sent me with my grandma. She just took me, actually. And then when I got in 4th grade, my grandma sent me over to her sister who had raised her and my mother and my great aunt, and my aunt, excuse me. And she began to raise me and my brother. And she had 8th grade education, had been a medical assistant for the white doctor in town, and had retired because her husband had passed. So it was just us in the country. She owned some land that was inherited from slavery from her husband, and we lived on about $400 a month. So life was a little bit different in the country.
Wow, what part? Okay, give me some towns. Give me some names of the
name town, Sheffield, Arkansas. It's if you're coming down Highway I-55, rather, make a left on the joint exit. 5 miles west, you find our house sitting on a dirt road in a highway intersection.
Wow, so you went from Memphis to almost no one around.
No, not almost. No neighbors. Whoa. And the only neighbor that was there was across the street, and I've never met them.
Oh my God.
Ever.
Okay. So, fondest memories of being in Memphis early years, and then in Arkansas.
I love just being able to have family gatherings during the holidays in Memphis. Because my grandma, again, middle class, nice house. She would buy gifts and stuff, so it was time for us to come together. But my family was extremely dysfunctional, a lot of trauma. So when we got together, it wouldn't take long before stuff hit the fan. Wasn't many of us, so any issue was a big deal. But it was still good to be around each other. And then when I went to Arkansas, my great aunt, who was 62 years my senior, if I'm not mistaken, she had raised a lot of people, and she had never had children of her own.
Right.
She couldn't. She had this love that she gave to us, and it was always somebody in our house. You know, there would be an auntie that needed somewhere to live, or my babysitter who was her friend, her husband had passed, and she moved in with us. It was just one of those things where the love in the house is what I always will remember.
Wow. Give me a memory. Give me a fond memory.
Yeah.
Give me just an incident.
And being in the country, whenever there was a storm, the lights would go out. We lived in a little bitty house, and there was a little hallway in the middle, so she would get afraid because tornadoes would come through because it was flat. And so when the lights would go out, we'd go in there and we'd look outside to see if the power man had come yet. And we just lay on the floor, and she'd just tell me stories. One of the stories she told me, she was in school with white kids, a black girl, and she was messing with her because they was teasing because she had to get sack lunches. She was in the toilet, and the girl poked her eye to look at her, and she poked her with a toy gun in the eye. But I died laughing. To hear auntie say she poked the girl in the eye, that was hilarious. But she told me so much stuff that I use to this day.
Okay. What kind of not so fond memories do you remember being in that time?
I guess if you would say that, because I've always been able to block out negativity and stuff that didn't go well. But just, I guess, not having my mom and dad around early, and then my mom passed when she was 49. So, you know, to look back now, I missed all those years, and then not having now, it's kind of, you know, that burns a little bit, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I try to use it as fuel to keep going. How do
you look at the transition from, like, you know, from being a kid to high school, you know, that precipice of adulthood? Tell us about that piece of your life. How did that go?
It was interesting. So at 12, my great aunt decided we needed some money, so we would sell an acre of land here or there, and I would be the person she would ask if we should do it. You know, I'm 12. I'm making grown folks decisions. And I'm like, yeah or no, and then we move on. I had to help her budget and all those things. And then when I got into school, when we consolidated the schools, 8th grade, I was nominated and selected as class president in the segregated South with all these 3 different schools coming together, and don't know how it happened. And I ended up being president till I graduated high school. You know, no one even, by the time I was in 10th grade, folks wouldn't even run against me. It was just crazy how I had the influence and the friendship that I developed over that time.
Listen, this is The Journey, and we're speaking with Mr. DeAndre Brown, Executive Director of Lifeline to Success. Now, DeAndre, early on, as we like to say in the neighborhood, you know, he liked to play in the snow a little bit. I want to know, how does a young man in the segregated South, a black young man, push up and date a young Caucasian woman when you're not even supposed to talk to each other?
And I still, man, I get back and I try to remember how it happened. I know we were friends, and there was a group of us. You know, had this group of friends, 4 or 5 guys, 4 or 5 girls, and she was the only white girl in the group. And to be honest with you, I thought she was already dating one of my friends. So it made it like, well, you know what? if she like him, she may like me too. Let me see. We were number 1 and 2 in our class. I was number 1 because my name was a B. Since my name was higher, I was number 1. So it's like, it made sense. Give it a shot. And you know, as they say, the rest is history. And we had some conversations, and yeah.
When was it over? What was that moment that the community let you know that it wasn't okay?
They didn't.
Oh, wow. Tell me about it.
Nobody even brought it up. I got suspended in 11th grade, but that was it. Because the bus driver, who's black guy, called and told that I took her home on the bus. And it was like, you can't do that. I go over my friend's house all the time on the bus, but you can't. You have to get off on your own stop. Oh, this is a new rule? Because I've been doing this all my life. Yeah, that was the only thing that ever was brought up. And I don't know if it was because I was so bold, because I look back on our senior video, brother, I was living reckless. You don't know it at the time. I look back, what the hell was I thinking? Because any moment, it could have been done, but it didn't.
So, transitioning to college, tell us about that. How was it going from rural Arkansas, coming back to the big city of Memphis, going to a prestigious, basically predominantly white school?
Oh yeah, when my freshman year, when we brought us in, I think it was 13 of us that were African American of the 250 they brought in that year. We sat at the front table in the cafeteria called the Rat, and it was a complete culture shock. Since I played football, I came on campus a couple of weeks early, and I saw these cars, 4Runners, Mercedes-Benz, Porsches. I'm like, these teachers, that's the first mistake, teachers. These teachers must make a lot of money. Found out, no, those are my football teammates' cars. One of my friends from California's dad, his friend, bought him a Porsche for graduation. His dad's friend. One of my most fond memories of, I don't want to say fond, one of the most memorable moments of entering Rhodes College is going into the auditorium, and they're getting ready to talk to you about how your schedule's going to go, what class you're going to take. French professor gets up and speaks fluently in French. A couple of kids start laughing. I'm like, why are they laughing? To one of my classmates, she said, he told a joke. I'm like, uh-oh. So you mean, I took a little French, but I can't do that.
Right.
And if that's the norm, I'm in for a shock. But being who I am, it wasn't an issue. I figured it out, learned, began to do what I did. But then next door to my mom's house, they were selling dope. New Jack City had come out. Menace to Society had come out. I came by gas because I had a room on campus in the dorm, but I didn't feel comfortable in the dorm. So I'd go home. And I hadn't been around my mama, so it's perfect. I'm at home with my mama. I'm doing this thing, but I can't get back to school. Tried to work at FedEx on the weekend. Couldn't do that, play football and run track. So there was a bucket outside my mom's house, and our neighbors, the next door neighbor was the dope house. And at 1 o'clock, the guys would go home. But Cone, if anybody knows, Cone kept coming through, and we lived in a cove, so you see them turn around looking for the dope boy, nobody there. I'm like, shoot, if they looking, I can give me some, and I can just have it. I ain't got to go right there. Nobody even know I'm selling dope. I can do it at night when everybody's asleep, and tried it. Did not know the game at all. I was green. Didn't understand the hard it took. Didn't understand the conniving, the manipulation, the economy. I didn't understand the lingo. I was just like a fish out of water. But I said, I'm smart. I'm gonna figure this out. And that's what I did. I got me a mentor who was at the house next. He was 38, I was 19. And he lived in the house next door with his mom. And he was sprung. He taught me the game. I let him, he fixed my truck, we talked, and we sit down for hours. He just started schooling me. He didn't know who he was. And I started eating it up, taking mental notes. Like, all right, this, that. And I said, I'm smarter than most of these guys. Let me try this. Ended up not selling dope no more because I didn't want to be ruthless. And then, I don't know where this came from, I began to be a white-collar criminal and got good at it.
Okay, tell me about the white-collar criminal. When did you make the transition from the dope game to white-collar crime?
I got arrested by accident. They thought I was somebody else, and that's when they were really just knocking people up in the hood because they couldn't catch the dope boys. They locked me up, found out it wasn't me, let me go. I spent the first 8 hours in jail, so I ain't doing that no more. But I needed some money. So I figured out, a guy came by my mom's house, I pay your light bill, half price. Then I was selling cars at the time. It came to the dealership, someone buy a car or two from you. I'm a sheriff. And I got his name. He lied about who he was. The dealership took his lie, put him in a car without checking his information, and he got away with it. Then a month later, he's on the news. I get called in. Why'd you do it? So y'all told me he could get it. I figured if he can get over on them, I can too. Learn the game, went in finance, learned how to do it all. And before I knew it, I was in Master P had just come out with Hardly If You Hear Me. I got the hook up.
Right.
I got the hook up. Hardly If You Hear Me. Started putting people in cars, wasn't supposed to be in them. It was a mess. And got away with it for a while until I took a vacation, took too many days off.
Okay.
And then I come back, and I never took a check. A friend of mine wanted his sister to get a car. Took a check from her because it's my friend's sister. Sister-in-law, rather. She came back after I was on vacation. So I'm looking, my mom won't let me keep this car illegally. I need to get it right. I need the payment book so I can make payments. They looked it up, so I was in a car. Next thing you know, they looked at all my deals. Ended up, I was left over $100,000. The funny part about it, Larry, the payment book was in the glove compartment of the car the whole time. But when they took the car, she started singing. They said the rest is history.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, regrets. You may regret.
I regret not being there for my older children. Being in the street, you can't be a father. You can't be present. And I had children by two different women, and my wife at the time didn't want me seeing my other son because I had him while we were together. So I missed all of his life until recently. And then my oldest son, who was our child together, he was talking to me the other day. He's like, "'Cause Dad, when you left, I never thought about that." He was 12, and I left. I didn't leave home. I went to prison. But then when I left and went to prison, I didn't go back home. And his life changed when I left. And he had never said that to me. I regret that.
Wow. Tell me about your career. How did you get to, after prison, how did you get to Lifeline to success?
When I went to prison, I had a cleaning company. That's how I kind of hid my money. And that was how I washed it. And when I came home from prison, my new wife said, "We'll just do this again. Put in your name, we'll do it." And started doing it. Got a good contract with a local hospital. Had full-time employees. I was the environmental services director, invited to all the meetings. They found I had a record after 18 months because they wanted me to be a volunteer chaplain. Ran my background, saw I had a record, took the keys immediately. I said, "What?" Broke my heart. We ended up homeless, losing our house. Went and lived to a homeless shelter for 4 months, me and my wife and our kids. And in the process, I met Prison Fellowship, and I wanted to preach in prison. They said, "We're not preaching, we're doing reentry." What is that? I had been in prison, didn't know what reentry was. They trained me on how to do it, took us in, we started a program in the women's prison. 6 months in, they left from a 12-month program. So we finished it, and in the process started Lifeline to Success. Because I realized somebody had to care about the folks that I love enough to do something about it. I don't complain, I make things happen. Right. We created this thing 11 years ago, and 11 years later, we're still here.
Wow. So success has taken you up, down, round corners, sometimes false success, but it brought you to here. If you could talk to that young guy, maybe back there and say, Arkansas sophomore sitting there at the lunchroom counter, what would you say to him?
Focus and be patient. In 10th grade, our pipes burst under the house, and we couldn't get them fixed. So I didn't have running water in the house. Junior year, senior year, I'm taking baths in this much water because I have to go outside to tote water in. It built character.
Wait a minute, you took baths in about an inch of water?
Yeah, and you find out, because what happens is you have to get water from the hydrant outside. There's no water in the house. And you have to boil it on the stove. And we couldn't pay for gas, so we had a wood-burning stove in the living room. So you put a pot of water on and get it hot, and take it, put it in the bathtub. By the time you get 3 pots of water in there, it's cold. So you either take a cold bath, or you take a bath in this much water. When you got to flush the toilet, when you want to cook, when you want water to drink, it all comes from outside. You got to get your 5-gallon bucket, no matter if it's 20 degrees outside, if it's raining, if it's hot, it don't matter. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you got to go outside and get that water. Built character. But I think it created a sense of frustration because I felt like I deserved better. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to school. I'm a good student. I'm leading why is life so hard for me? And it made me fight the wrong way. Because the drive has always been in there, I just didn't take it in the right direction. I would tell that brother, just be patient. And if you stick to it, things will work out, but you got to be patient.
There's a lot of people looking at this or listening to this. Young men that are looking for a way. What would you say to them?
Find someone that you can trust and that you see you would like to be like, and introduce yourself. Had I done that a long time ago, things would have been different. The only male role models I had were coaches, and they didn't look like me, and they were not accessible. There was never really a successful man in my life that I could look to and talk to and have conversations with. Because when I found a man that could teach me something, he taught me the dope game, and I learned it and did well. Had I found a mentor that was doing it the right way, I think the same thing would have happened.
And there you have it. You have learned about the journey of DeAndre Brown, pastor, let's say pastor, or Rev. DeAndre Brown. Also executive director of Lifeline to Success. DeAndre, thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us today.
Amen. I pray to help somebody.
Fantastic. And listen, we're going to keep bringing them. So as long as you keep coming, you're going to keep hearing about these phenomenal Memphis icons. Stay right there. Come back, visit with us. But listen, it's all going to be right here on The Journey. Talk to you soon. Peace.
The Journey hosted by Larry Robinson. Executive producer, The Delta Boulay.